You ever just sit there and realize how quiet life has become? Maybe the phone doesn't ring as much, the house feels emptier, and the days start blending together. It's not that you don't have things to do, you do, but something feels off. Loneliness creeps up in the sneakiest ways. It's not always about being physically alone. Sometimes it's about feeling unseen, unheard, or like life has lost a little bit of its spark. And when that feeling sticks around too long, we start looking for anything to fill the gap, just something to make us feel alive, connected, or at least distracted from that ache inside. That's where addiction comes in. Now, I'm not just talking about the big, obvious ones like alcohol or drugs. No, addiction can be shopping, hoarding, excessive caffeine, binge-watching TV, diving into conspiracy theories, or even risky behaviors like reckless driving, things that start off small, innocent, even fun. But suddenly they take over, and before we know it, we're trapped. But here's the good news. There's always a way out. You don't have to stay stuck in habits that don't serve you. You don't have to settle for distractions when what you really want is real, meaningful connection. So let's talk about it. Let's dive deep into how loneliness can lead to addiction in seniors, what it looks like, and most importantly, how to break free and find something even better. Number 1, seeking comfort in prescription medications. You've probably heard the phrase, just take one if you need it. That's how it always starts, doesn't it? A single pill to help you sleep, another to ease that persistent back pain. Maybe one for anxiety after an especially difficult day. Before you know it, these little helpers turn into something you need just to get through the day. Let's talk about Margaret. She lost her husband of 50 years, and suddenly her house felt more like a museum than a home. Nights were the hardest, too quiet, too empty. Her doctor prescribed sleeping pills to help, and at first they were a godsend. She finally got some rest. But then one pill wasn't enough. She needed 2, then 3. Soon she wasn't just taking them at night. She started taking them during the day too, just to dull the ache of loneliness. Prescription drug dependence in seniors often starts innocently. Painkillers, sedatives, or anti-anxiety medications offer relief from both physical pain and emotional distress. But over time, the body craves more, and suddenly what was once a helpful aid turns into a necessity. Before they realize it, many seniors are trapped in a cycle they never meant to fall into. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. The important thing is recognizing when these medications stop helping and start controlling. The first step is always the hardest, but reaching out, whether to a friend, doctor, or support group, can be life-changing. Number 2, increased alcohol consumption as a social substitute. Have you ever poured yourself a drink, not because you really wanted one, but because it made the loneliness a little easier to bear? Take John, for example. He was always a social drinker, never had a problem with alcohol in his younger years. But when his friends started passing away or moving to assisted living, his usual Friday night outings became a thing of the past. His house was just too quiet, so he started having a glass of wine in the evenings, then 2, then a few more. It made the loneliness feel fuzzy, almost unnoticeable. The thing about alcohol is that it doesn't fix loneliness, it just numbs it. But numbing doesn't heal. What starts as an occasional drink to fill the silence can gradually become a dependency. Seniors are especially vulnerable because their bodies process alcohol differently than when they were younger, making them more prone to its effects. What once felt like a harmless habit can spiral into a crutch that's hard to let go of. If you find yourself reaching for a drink out of habit rather than enjoyment, take a moment to ask yourself, is this really making me feel better in the long run? You deserve true connection, not just a temporary escape. Number 3, turning to cannabis for emotional relief. For many, cannabis used to be something they never considered. But as medical marijuana became more accepted, some seniors turned to it for pain relief, sleep issues, or anxiety. At first, it seems like a natural remedy, and it can be helpful in controlled, mindful doses. But the problem arises when it becomes the go-to solution for emotional emptiness. Let's talk about Catherine. After retiring, she found herself feeling isolated and anxious. She lived alone, and the days stretched on endlessly. A friend suggested cannabis edibles to help her relax, and she gave them a try. The effects were comforting. It felt like a warm hug. So she kept using them. And soon, instead of facing her loneliness, she was escaping it. Cannabis, much like alcohol or prescription medication, can become a coping mechanism rather than a tool for relief. Instead of addressing the underlying loneliness, it simply masks it. Seniors who use it too frequently may withdraw from social activities, preferring the haze of relaxation over the effort of real connection. Over time, it can become an emotional dependency, one that prevents true healing. If you or someone you know is relying on cannabis as an emotional escape, take a step back. Finding ways to address the root of loneliness through community, hobbies, or therapy can be far more fulfilling than numbing the pain. Number 4, overuse of over-the-counter sleep aids. It starts with one restless night, then another, then another. You tell yourself, I just need a little help falling asleep. And so you pick up some over-the-counter sleep aids, maybe melatonin, maybe antihistamines, maybe herbal sleep supplements. They work at first and you feel relieved. But then your body gets used to them. You need higher doses. Soon the thought of sleeping without them feels impossible. Margaret, yes, her again, was in this exact situation. After her husband passed, sleep became a nightly battle. The silence of the house was suffocating. She started with a mild sleep aid, but as time went on, she found herself taking more than the recommended dose. If she didn't take them, she would toss and turn for hours. Sleep wasn't something that came naturally anymore. It was something she had to force. The problem with over-the-counter sleep aids is that they're not meant for long-term use. They can lead to dependency, disrupt natural sleep cycles, and even cause cognitive issues in older adults. But loneliness makes these risks easy to overlook. When your only company is the glow of a bedside lamp, anything that promises a few hours of escape seems worth it. But what if instead of relying on sleep aids, there were other ways to improve sleep? Simple things like setting a relaxing nighttime routine, staying physically active during the day, or even listening to soothing music. Sleep should come naturally, not from a bottle. Number 5, emotional eating leading to food addiction. You know that feeling when you take a bite of something delicious and for just a moment everything feels a little bit better? The stress, the sadness, the loneliness, it all fades away, if only for a few minutes. But then the feeling returns, and suddenly you're reaching for another bite, and another. Let's talk about Robert. He used to have dinner every night with his wife, laughing over meals and enjoying each other's company. But after she passed, dinner became the loneliest time of day. At first he barely ate at all, but one evening he treated himself to a big bowl of ice cream while watching TV. It felt comforting, like a hug in food form. The next night he did it again. Soon he wasn't eating because he was hungry. He was eating to fill the emptiness. Food addiction doesn't start with a conscious decision. It begins as a coping mechanism. Sugar and processed foods release dopamine, the brain's feel-good chemical, just like drugs or alcohol do. Over time, the brain craves more, and eating becomes about emotion rather than nutrition. Seniors, especially those who live alone, may turn to food not because they're hungry, but because it's the only source of pleasure they have in their day. But the relief is temporary. The guilt, weight gain, and health complications that follow only make things worse. If you find yourself eating out of boredom, sadness, or loneliness rather than true hunger, it might be time to explore other sources of comfort. Ones that truly nourish your soul, not just your stomach. Number 6. Gambling as a distraction from loneliness. The thrill of a winning hand, the flashing lights, the rush of adrenaline. Gambling isn't just about money, it's about excitement, escape, and filling a void. Imagine Linda. She never cared much for casinos, but after her husband passed and her kids moved away, the loneliness became unbearable. One day, a friend invited her to a bingo night at the local senior center. She won a little cash and felt a spark of joy she hadn't felt in months. That thrill, that moment of feeling alive, stayed with her. She started visiting the casino a little more often. It gave her something to look forward to, a break from the long, empty days at home. But before she knew it, she wasn't just going for fun anymore. She needed to go. It wasn't about winning, it was about feeling something. Many seniors fall into gambling addiction because it provides a temporary escape from isolation. Whether it's slot machines, online poker, or even innocent-seeming scratch tickets, gambling offers a quick dopamine hit, but the losses add up, both financially and emotionally. The problem is that the house always wins, but loneliness never loses. It's always waiting for you when the excitement wears off. If you find yourself gambling not for fun, but to avoid the emptiness, it may be time to find a different kind of thrill, one that enriches your life rather than drains it. Number 7, overindulgence in television or internet usage. Have you ever turned on the TV just for background noise only to realize hours have passed? Or maybe you've scrolled through the internet late at night, losing track of time while reading endless articles, watching videos, or clicking through social media. That's exactly what happened to George. When he was younger, his days were full of activity, work, family, and hobbies. But after retirement, he found himself sitting alone in front of the television for most of the day. It started with just a few hours, but soon the TV became his main source of company. He stopped calling friends, stopped going outside, and eventually stopped caring about anything other than his daily routine of TV shows. The internet can be just as addictive. Seniors, especially those who feel isolated, may spend hours watching YouTube videos, reading news articles, or scrolling through forums. It feels productive, but it can quickly become a way to escape reality. The danger is that life starts to shrink. The longer you spend in front of a screen, the harder it becomes to step outside, make new friends, or engage in real-world activities. Before you know it, the only relationships you have are with fictional characters or distant online strangers. If this sounds familiar, try setting small limits. Turn off the TV after a set time. Go for a short walk instead of watching one more episode. Life is happening outside that screen. You just have to take the first step to join it. Number 8, misuse of social media for validation. Social media can be a wonderful way to stay connected, but it can also become a dangerous trap for loneliness and self-worth. Let's talk about Susan. She had always been active in her community, but as her mobility declined, she found herself spending more time at home. She started posting on Facebook more often, sharing pictures and updates, hoping to stay in touch with friends and family. At first, it felt great to see people liking her posts and commenting, but soon she started checking constantly. Who liked her photo? Who commented? Why didn't this person respond? Before she knew it, her happiness was tied to notifications. If a post didn't get enough likes, she felt invisible. If people didn't comment, she felt forgotten. Social media, instead of bringing her closer to people, was making her feel even more alone. This happens more than people realize. Seniors, especially those struggling with isolation, may start seeking validation online instead of real-life connections. The highs of a well-received post can be addicting, but the lows of feeling ignored can be devastating. If you find yourself checking social media more for approval than connection, it might be time to step back. Social media should be a tool for communication, not a measure of your worth. True connection happens in real conversations, real friendships, and real moments, not in the number of likes on a screen. Number 9, shopping addiction as retail therapy. We've all heard the phrase retail therapy, and let's be honest, buying something new feels good. There's a little rush of excitement when you bring home a fresh pair of shoes, a new kitchen gadget, or even just a few extra groceries you didn't really need. But when shopping turns into a constant escape from loneliness, it can quickly spiral into addiction. Take Carol, for example. She used to love shopping with her friends, wandering the mall, grabbing lunch, and chatting about life. But as time passed, her friends moved away or became less active, and those shopping trips became solo outings. At first, it was just a way to pass the time, but soon she noticed something. Buying things made her feel less lonely. Each purchase gave her a brief moment of happiness. A new dress, even if she had nowhere to wear it. A kitchen appliance, even though she barely cooked anymore. Packages arriving at her doorstep made her feel important, seen, and valued, even if only for a moment. But then, the credit card bills piled up. Closets overflowed. The joy of shopping turned into guilt and anxiety, yet she still kept doing it, hoping that maybe the next purchase would finally make her feel whole. Shopping addiction sneaks up when we start chasing the feeling of fulfillment instead of actually filling our lives with meaningful things. If you find yourself buying things not because you need them, but because you need the momentary happiness they bring, it may be time to look at what's missing beneath the surface. Because no amount of shopping can replace true connection. Number 10. Hoarding as a means of creating comfort. Some people collect memories, others collect things. Have you ever looked around your home and realized that the things you hold on to aren't just objects, but pieces of your past? That's exactly what happened to Frank. Frank grew up during tough times where everything had value, nothing was wasted. After his wife passed, he found it impossible to let go of anything. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Old newspapers stacked up in the corner because I might need them someday. Empty jars, broken electronics, old Christmas cards. Each item felt like a piece of security in an unpredictable world. Hoarding often starts as an emotional response to loss, loneliness, or fear of change. For many seniors, especially those who live alone, possessions can feel like companions. They tell stories, bring back memories, and create a sense of stability in a world that feels increasingly unfamiliar. But over time, what starts as comfort can turn into isolation. The clutter takes over, making it hard to invite people over. The mess becomes overwhelming, but the thought of getting rid of anything feels unbearable. Instead of creating a warm, safe space, the home turns into a prison of the past. If you or someone you know struggles with letting go of things, try asking, is this item adding to my life or holding me back? Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means making room for new memories, new experiences, and new connections that bring true comfort. Number 11. Over-reliance on nostalgic media for escapism. There's nothing wrong with loving old movies, classic music, or rewatching your favorite TV shows. Nostalgia is powerful. It brings us back to simpler, happier times. But what happens when nostalgia becomes a way to escape from the present? Meet Dorothy. She used to love watching new movies, reading new books, and learning about new things. But after her children moved away and her husband passed, she found herself stuck in the past. She only listened to the same old songs, only watched the TV shows from her youth, and only surrounded herself with things from decades ago. At first it felt comforting, like a warm, familiar embrace. But soon she stopped engaging with the present altogether. She ignored invitations to social events, avoided trying new hobbies, and resisted anything that felt different from the world she once knew. The more she clung to the past, the more disconnected she became from the life happening around her. Nostalgia should be a bridge, not a wall. It's wonderful to revisit old memories, but when it stops you from creating new ones, it can become a trap. If you find yourself stuck in the past, try balancing nostalgia with new experiences. Listen to a mix of old and new music, watch a classic film, then try something modern. Memories are precious, but life is still happening now, and there's so much more left to experience. Number 12. Overdependence on energy drinks or caffeine. Caffeine. Our daily pick-me-up, our little boost of energy when we need it most. It starts off innocent enough. A morning coffee to wake up, an afternoon tea to keep going. But when loneliness makes daily life feel exhausting, caffeine can become something we rely on too much. Take Richard. He never used to drink more than 1 cup of coffee a day, but after retiring he found himself feeling sluggish and unmotivated. His days felt endless, and without a job or social commitments, he needed something to push him through the boredom. So he started drinking more coffee. Then he discovered energy drinks, quick, easy, and effective. At first, they gave him the boost he was looking for, but soon he found himself drinking them just to feel normal. Without them, he felt irritable, tired, and unfocused. His sleep suffered, his anxiety grew, and he felt restless yet exhausted at the same time. Seniors are especially vulnerable to caffeine dependence because their bodies process stimulants differently than when they were younger. Too much caffeine can lead to heart issues, high blood pressure, anxiety, and insomnia. And the worst part, it doesn't actually fix the real problem, it just masks it. If you find yourself relying on caffeine not just for energy but for motivation, it might be time to look at what's draining you in the first place. Maybe it's loneliness, maybe it's a lack of purpose, maybe it's boredom. Whatever it is, caffeine isn't the real solution. Finding joy and connection in your day is. 13. Excessive religious or spiritual dependence to an unhealthy degree. Faith can be a beautiful thing. It can bring hope, comfort, and a sense of purpose. But when loneliness takes hold, it's easy for that faith to become less about connection with something greater and more about escaping reality. Take Margaret. She had always been religious, but after her husband passed, she found herself spending all her time in prayer, at church, or consuming religious content. At first, it helped. Prayer gave her peace. Church services gave her a reason to leave the house, and religious books gave her something to focus on. But soon she started using faith as a shield against the real world. She refused to see friends, believing they were too worldly. She stopped making decisions for herself, instead waiting for a divine sign for even the smallest choices. She judged those who didn't believe exactly as she did. She told herself that suffering was meant to be endured, not changed. What started as faith turned into isolation, and that's the danger. When spiritual beliefs are used not to enhance life, but to hide from it. Faith should be a source of strength, not a reason to stop growing, engaging, and connecting with others. If spirituality starts to replace real human relationships, decision-making, or personal joy, it might be time to ask, is my faith helping me live, or is it keeping me trapped? Because even the most sacred beliefs should encourage living fully, not retreating from the world. 14. Risky behaviors for a sense of thrill, like extreme dieting, dangerous stunts, or reckless driving. Do you remember the thrill of doing something a little reckless in your younger years? Maybe you raced a friend in your car, tried a daring stunt, or went on an extreme diet just to see if you could. That feeling of pushing limits, feeling alive, testing your boundaries, it never quite disappears. But for some seniors, loneliness can make them crave that adrenaline again, sometimes in dangerous ways. Take Henry. He spent his whole life playing it safe, raising a family, working hard, and being responsible. But after retirement, the days felt too quiet. His kids were busy, his wife had passed, and his once exciting life had become a dull routine. He started feeling invisible, like nothing he did mattered anymore, so he decided to take risks to feel something again. He started driving way too fast, weaving in and out of traffic like a teenager showing off. He went on extreme crash diets, testing how long he could go without eating just to see the weight drop fast. He even considered trying dangerous sports that he hadn't done in decades. Why? Because he needed to feel alive again. For seniors struggling with loneliness, thrill-seeking can become an addiction, a way to shake off the numbness. But the problem is that it often leads to injury, health problems, or worse. The real thrill, one that lasts, comes from purpose, adventure, and connection, not reckless risks. If you find yourself craving danger just to break the monotony, ask yourself, what is it I'm really missing? Maybe it's excitement, challenge, or just a reason to wake up each morning. And maybe, just maybe, there's a safer, healthier way to find that spark again. 15. Obsessive collection or extreme hobbyism to fill a void? Everyone needs a hobby. Whether it's gardening, painting, collecting antiques, or building model trains, hobbies bring joy, purpose, and a sense of accomplishment. But sometimes hobbies become more than just hobbies. They become an escape from dealing with deeper emotions. Meet Gerald. After retiring, he felt a huge emptiness in his life, so he decided to take up collecting rare coins, something he had always been mildly interested in. At first, it was just a casual pastime, but soon it became an obsession. He spent hours each day researching, bidding in online auctions, and traveling to conventions. He poured all his money into his collection, sometimes skipping meals just to afford a rare coin. When his daughter asked him to visit her for the weekend, he refused. He had a big auction coming up. His world shrank down to just his hobby. The problem wasn't the collecting, it was why he was doing it. He wasn't collecting for joy, he was collecting to fill the silence, the loneliness, the lack of purpose. Hobbies should add to life, not replace it. If a passion starts blocking out relationships, draining finances, or becoming an obsession, it's worth asking, am I doing this because I love it or because I don't want to face something else? Because no collection, no hobby, and no obsession can replace human connection. 16. Hyper-focus on conspiracy theories or alternative beliefs to create a sense of purpose. It starts with one video, one article, one conversation, something that sounds interesting, something that makes you question things. And before you know it, you're deep in a rabbit hole, questioning everything you once believed. That's exactly what happened to Tom. After retiring, Tom spent a lot of time alone. His wife had passed, his kids were grown, and the TV became his best friend. One night, he stumbled upon a documentary about secret government cover-ups. It intrigued him, so he watched another video, then another. Soon he was spending hours reading obscure websites, joining online forums, and cutting off anyone who didn't believe what he now knew to be true. He felt a sense of belonging in these communities. He finally had something to fight for, something that gave his life meaning. But the more he dug in, the more paranoid and isolated he became. Family members tried to reach out, but he pushed them away, convinced they were brainwashed. For many seniors, diving into conspiracies or extreme beliefs isn't just about the theories themselves. It's about finding purpose in something bigger than themselves. When life feels empty, these beliefs provide structure, importance, and community. But the cost? Broken relationships, paranoia, and an increasingly limited view of the world. If you or someone you know is slipping into extreme beliefs, ask, is this enriching my life or cutting me off from it? Because true purpose comes from meaningful relationships, real connections, and contributing to something positive in the real world. So we've covered it all. The shopping addiction that starts as a quick pick-me-up, the hoarding that feels like comfort, the conspiracy rabbit holes that provide a sense of purpose, and even the caffeine reliance that just keeps you going. And at the heart of it all, loneliness. The tricky thing about loneliness is that it whispers. It doesn't show up at your door screaming, "Hey, you're isolated." No, it's more subtle than that. It hides behind little habits, behind excuses, behind routines that feel like they're keeping you afloat. But really, they're keeping you stuck. But here's the thing. You are not meant to just get by. You are meant to thrive. Maybe that means reaching out to an old friend. Maybe it means joining a local club, trying a new hobby, one that doesn't consume you, or simply stepping outside and talking to a neighbor. Maybe it's just acknowledging that something needs to change and taking the first tiny step toward that change. Because the real solution to addiction isn't just stopping the habit, it's filling the void it was trying to cover. You are still so full of life, of value, of stories that need to be told, and memories that are waiting to be made. So let's not let loneliness win. Let's choose connection, purpose, and joy instead. Because the best days, they aren't behind you. They're still waiting for you. If anything in this video resonated with you, don't just click away and move on with your day. Take one small step. Reach out to an old friend, try something new, or even just acknowledge that maybe it's time for a change. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you know someone who might need to hear this, share it with them. Let's keep this conversation going. Because no one should have to go through this alone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.